All right, are we live? Let us know in the chat if we're live. Let's see if this thing is working. It's been giving us some issues. So let us know if we're live. Are we live? Are we live? Are we live? Let us
I'm
know if we're
excited.
live.
I'm excited to be live, Bobby. I don't know about you,
It's a
but
great day to be live and alive,
yes, yes.
especially when the Giants are in the playoffs and won a playoff game. Let us know in the chat. Come on, we're waiting on you to tell us, are we live? I will not start until the chat tells us we're live. That's a rule for
Oh
the
my
Talking
gosh.
Giants
You see,
streams.
I don't even have access to the chat, so I can't even help you out there.
If you press the comments button on the top right, you should get access to it. All right, we're live. We're live.
Oh yeah,
We're
we're
live.
live.
It's Sean's lying, but we're all live. All right. We didn't get to stream the last couple of days, been nonstop flying, event stuff, film review, blah, 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 blah. But we wanted to do this last week and ended up not doing it. But we got Chris Rose of John Boy Media, NFL Network, the Best Damn Sports Show.
Oh boy.
A lot of good things, and Chris Rose has been working at John Boy Media for some time. We haven't had the chance to get him on. Chris, how are you doing? How's playoff football treating you?
It's been awesome. Last week was great. First game, obviously, for 2.5 quarters, Niners Seahawks was fun. The culmination of Super Wild Card Weekend was about what I expected. There were a lot of people who were like, "Oh, the Bucks are ducked in Week 18 against Washington." They were significantly better than Tampa, and Dak played that way. The meat part of the Super Wild Card Weekend sandwich was unbelievable. Right, starting Saturday night, 27-point comeback by Jacksonville, continuing on with Miami. I thought showing tremendous grit, even though they lost. Your game was sensational, as Daniel Jones played the best game of his career. And then the nightcap on Sunday night with the turnaround at the goal line was, a momentum swing that we don't get to see very often. So, but we're really here to talk Giants, Vikings, Giants, Eagles. Yeah, Daniel Jones, defensive front line that applied a ton of pressure to Kirk Cousins. So let's have fun. Let's do this, Bobby.
And Battle Boss Legend, which, by the way, I know you Best in Sports. When I found out you did Battle Boss, I grew up as a kid. I mean, I didn't grow up watching Battle Boss, but Battle Boss was something we always watched on the weekend. Like I was I was like addicted to racing and stuff before I even got into football and anything like that. So Battle Boss is pretty cool too.
Well, by the way, for those of you that don't know, we just kicked off season 7. You can catch it on Discovery every Thursday night at 8:00, or on Discovery Plus if you're into the streaming version of it. We're only 2 weeks in, so you haven't missed a ton yet. It's a great season. I love doing the show, and I didn't know shit about it when I started in 2015, but now I dig it. It's my favorite 2 weeks of the year.
I want to talk some shop with you, just your career and some stuff towards the end, but we'll start with Giants football because that's what everyone is listening to hear from. The Giants season obviously was not expected to be anything like this, right? Like even if they scrapped into the wild card, no one would have thought they would be a team that would win in the wild card weekend. And I think it's pretty impressive for them because you could talk about the Vikings being like, fraudulent or not as good as their record makes it out to seem. But that should be something people are saying about the Giants being in the playoffs too.
Mm-hmm.
And they outscored them. Like as much as the Vikings defense isn't good, their offense was the top 5, top 6 in the league, and they outscored them. Who was maybe outside of Daniel Jones, because that's always the easy one. Who was the guy that maybe like that you came away most impressed with, or a guy you didn't really know well after this game?
I've been paying attention to Isaiah Hodgins for quite a while now. When they first picked him up and he scored, I was like, Isaiah Hodgins, like that's where we are now on the Giants receiver depth chart, and so I really kind of got turned on to him a little while ago because Emmanuel Sanders is a guy that started with us at NFL Network this year, and he's like, yeah, Isaiah Hodgins is my guy. That was one of the guys that he mentored in Buffalo last season. Right. And has kept in touch with him and all that sort of stuff. I didn't know that he had a 100-yard game in him in the playoffs. People can take shots at that Minnesota defense as much as they want. You still got to get it done, with all the pressures that surround you. So I thought that he kind of popped on that day. I loved seeing that. Defensively, it's weird because I've talked to a bunch of my Giants friends over the last several weeks, and I said, what do you guys do best? And they couldn't really give me an answer. Like, the running game kind of diminished the back half of the year, right?
Yeah.
Saquon over the last 6 games or so averaged about 54 yards a game. They obviously don't throw the ball downfield really well. Their offensive line isn't dominant. I think probably their defensive line, Dexter Lawrence has become arguably the best at what he does there in the middle. But I mean, what do you think? What did the Giants do best if you were to explain their success?
No, it's a good question because, oh, what is this team's identity? I really think it goes with the coaching staff and then Daniel Jones, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the coaching staff, um, you know, first half of the year they were run heavy, play action, and like you said, that started to dwindle. Like teams caught on to, like that can be kind of gimmicky, and teams caught on to it, and they just became a bad handoff team. And this coaching staff, what I think is best at, and even Wink Martindale, who was known for not adjusting, they adjusted. Like they adjusted after the first couple games to that run heavy play action, and then once that got caught on, they adjusted again and put the offense more in Daniel Jones' hands. Wink Martindale, known for blitzing every single down, he became like what some of the new defensive coordinators do, where it's like we play a little bit of a soft shell. He's still going to blitz, but he's not sending 6-7 guys like he's
Right.
known to do, or at least giving those threats. So they've changed. So I think Andrew Thomas and Dexter Lawrence are their best players on both sides of the ball. But
Mm-hmm.
Daniel Jones, like you said, not throwing the ball deep, but I watch him week in, week out, watch every play 3 times, and he's just kind of not making any mistakes at all. Like
Yeah.
there's maybe 2 mistakes a game, and even sometimes those end up being like 12-yard gains where he scrambled, but he should have taken a throw, 30 yards down the field. And again, like he went from that rookie year, all those turnovers, fumbles, now to where he leads the NFL in interception rate. Um, and you would think like they're gimmicky on defense, like, oh, they must have got a lot of turnovers to be decent with the talent they have. No,
No,
they don't have any turnovers. They have the
they
least
don't have
amount of
any
interceptions
turnovers.
in the NFL. Um,
Right.
so I think it's a lot of credit to the coaching staff, and then also having a quarterback in Daniel Jones who's been able to adjust with them as the season went along.
Yeah, I think the biggest question is did Daniel Jones reach his mountaintop last weekend? Like, is that where he maxes out, or if you get him some better weapons to throw to, is there more there? I think and that's a discussion for whenever this amazing journey ends, whether that's Saturday night or somewhere down the line, right? But at least it's a discussion, because to me, when MJD and I were talking about it last Sunday night on Game Day Final, I said, listen, Daniel Jones is a guy that essentially his own team quit on him. And he said, no, his team didn't quit on him. He needed to prove that he could do it. I said, no, no, no. There hasn't been a first round pick whose 5th-year option was turned down, who then extended with the team. That doesn't happen.
No, almost
So,
it essentially never happens. I think
no,
maybe
it
like
doesn't.
twice in the last like 5 to 10
I don't
years.
even think it's I don't even think it's that many. I don't think there have been first round quarterbacks who had the 5th-year option declined where they eventually stayed.
The only one that comes to my mind, and I hate saying it, is I think that might have happened to Blake Bortles, but I think he might have even been extended before then. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's
But yeah, you
possible
look
that
at
he
the
was
history. It's like
it's
it's a sign you're done. And we went
right.
into the
So,
season as John and been like Daniel Jones. It's funny, Chris, because we do our best at talking Giants, not to just be like not just talk about the quarterback and not always just playing the results of wins and losses. But we came into this year with Daniel Jones, and we've been fair with him. It's like, what is he going to do to come back? And we talked about like he's got to be better at this, but it's like he hasn't been horrible his whole career. He's just not. He's been on some horrible teams with, I think, the worst coaching in Jason Garrett. And we're breaking down, and finally we just shut it up and like, you know what? We hate to say this, but he's got to win games. Like they have to win games. And then this year they finally have put it together, and it's a credit to the coaching staff because the
totally.
roster around him has been really depleted.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, your $72 million receiver couldn't get on the field. The offensive line, it feels like they've been trying to revamp that thing for about 6 or 7 years now, and it feels like it's obviously going in the right direction there. Saquon still last week he was so explosive. It was so interesting that if you told me that he would have touched the ball only 14 times, I think it was. I think he had 9 carries and 5 catches,
Yeah.
and they would have won on the road, I would have been like, nah, you're full of shit. There's no way. But Those 14 touches, they made him count. Made him,
Yeah,
they got him in space. The spin move that he hit was unreal. The quick toss where he got for the game tying touchdown in the first quarter was sensational. I hope that Brandon Staley was watching that, because see what happens when you actually rest players in a meaningless game? They look kind of fresh and
I
they don't
know.
get their back broken. So,
Yeah. A lot of people were quoting Tom Coughlin and Bill Parcells before that Eagles game, and it's like, I understand it. I want them to play, but they can't. Yeah, and like you said, with Saquon not touching the ball much has actually helped this offense a ton, because he's not a workhorse back. And they used him like that early in the year. He kind of got worn down, and teams just started playing it. It's not just simply stacking the box. It's running plays that are designed to just stop the run, and they put the offense more in Daniel Jones' hands, which led to less negative plays, which the running game was doing. And that's what I want from Saquon right now. I actually think the contract conversation is a lot more trickier with him than it is Daniel Jones. But
I would
it's like,
agree.
give him touches and space when it makes sense, and let him do superstar stuff. And that was
Yeah.
what he did on Sunday, like you said, despite having 14 touches.
So now we get a quick turn, right? You guys go from the Sunday sandwich game to the Saturday night and divisional foe and all this sort of stuff. What is it? Nerves, excitement, anticipation? What is it? What are the Giants fans feeling right now? Do they feel like, hey, if the road ends Saturday, they still have given me way so much more than I anticipated, or are you like, we're this far, we got to keep going?
So we're fans. It's this far. We got to keep going. But it's a lot different than last week. That Eagles defense is something else. Like, they have 4 guys who have 10 plus sacks. Their 5th guy on that list is
Yep.
Fletcher Cox. And then there's other names where it's like, that guy's like a backup on that D line. Their corners, Darius Slay, I think, is a good, not great corner, but Giants fans know James Bradbury has been amazing for them this year. Like, I think he's been by far their best corner. He just doesn't talk as much as Slay, and that's kind of how the cornerback, position goes. The more you talk, the more notoriety you get. So that is what should worry Giants fans, is that front, and they struggled with it. And Evan Neal he's been really bad, and the Eagles took advantage of him. And then on the offense, their running game, especially if Jalen Hurts they're using him and healthy, they can run the ball down the Giants' throats. So
Absolutely.
it's a
Hey,
different
Bobby,
animal.
can you wait? Can you wait 60 seconds? I have to go open a door.
60 seconds. Go open the door.
Okay, good.
All right. While he opens doors, we've opened doors on streams before. Remember the guy on Superman Radio that wanted a tire? Hit us with some questions. We're gonna go with him for now about 10 minutes talking Giants football, and then I wanna talk shop. Maybe we don't really talk about John Boy Media much on these, but they've given us a lot of love the last week, so maybe we'll do some of that. Let's see. What do we got? Oh, this is Rob, who produces for Chris Rose. I was thinking about inviting like Rob on as like, hey, both of us, and me and Chris Rose don't really know each other well, but I decided not to, Rob. So this Rob right here. Rob, give me a question. I don't want him to see in the chat. Rob, give me a question for him. If the draft was tomorrow, what position would Chris take for the Giants? We're not going to do draft questions, but honestly, I hate to say it, probably corner, but we don't talk about draft until we know players. Bobby, how bad did Neal look against Minnesota? He was bad. It wasn't like a train wreck game. It wasn't like the Eagles game or even the first Vikings game, but he got beat around the corner consistently. But credit to Daniel Jones, he was just able to step up and run or make, and had that throw to Hodgins. So there was a lot there.
All right, I'm out of breath.
Okay, you're good. The chat wanted me to ask you about like some random Giants player and see if you could do it. What is your thoughts? What are your thoughts on Cordell Flott?
I mean, he made a great play last week.
There we go. Okay, so
remember,
you pass. You pass. There we go.
What? What does that mean?
Well, there's so I'm like a radio nerd, and
Right.
and which also means I like radio prank calls. And some of my favorite radio prank calls are calling in the radio shows, asking about people who aren't even players and seeing if they'll answer. Um, but hey, you knew the name. The guy played like 5 snaps last week, and you're the best in the biz. You got recall that, like, if you ask me who made a big play at the end of the Bengals Ravens game outside of Sam Hubbard, I couldn't tell you. So you've
Yeah.
got
Well,
amazing,
no.
amazing
Here,
recall.
okay. So let's peel back the curtain a little bit for what we do on a national level, at least at NFL Network. So for the last 10 years, what I do is, I do game day highlights, which is from 7:30 to 8:30 Eastern, and then we come on right after the Sunday night game for an hour. Our job is to watch every game we can. So we have them all on a big screen, and each one has its smaller screen, but then we can rotate 2 games into these enormous screens, one of which has audio. So it's almost like our own red zone, if you will. So if something interesting is happening in a game, if there's a controversial call, if there's an injury, if they're in the red zone, we try and move. We have a guy who's awesome, Drew, he's one of our producers there. He's so fast with the trigger finger, and he can put any game up there. So yes, I have a pretty good idea of, I'd say, 70% of all rosters. And I'm talking about not just skill guys or even defensive backs. I would include linemen in that. And I'm not going to know every little guy.
It's tough, man. Like, since we've been
yeah,
doing the Giants stuff, like, my knowledge of just the NFL around the league it's less than what it was 3 years ago,
totally.
even though I'm now full-time job is watching football and doing football stuff. So I'm always impressed when it's like, man, like, we want to do some national stuff, man. It's tough, and it's pretty
Yeah.
cool to see what you guys
So
do.
that's kind of what we do. And so I'm not going to admit that I know everything, every substitution pattern, have watched every play of the Giants this year. I'm not going to bullshit you. That's not the way it is. But I've watched every game this year.
Yeah.
And so I hopefully know enough about what's going on.
You call preseason games for the Browns.
Mm-hmm.
Do you enjoy preseason? Because preseason, I think, is like, I think it's some of the most fun stuff in the world for football fans, because you do get to see every single guy on the roster. Like the casual fan hates the preseason. I love it because, like, I get to get my evaluation on the 89th guy on the roster, and when he comes up to the practice squad, I got something to go off of.
Yeah, there's such an insatiable appetite for the NFL that people say they hate preseason, and then the preseason numbers are out of this world. They rate better than, like,
oh yeah,
players.
yeah. Giants fans are doing that with Alex Bachman, where it's like he had a great preseason, but
right.
he is not a slot wide receiver in the NFL.
Right. Well, that's the thing, is that we all, through those 3 games, we all find our favorites, and we're like, why isn't that guy getting more run? Because you're not privy to practice, and you're not in the meetings, and you don't know when that guy doesn't know his assignment and all that sort of stuff. So we all fall into that huge trap. But it's really, I had a great time. We had a great team this year. It was Joe Thomas, Aditi Kinkabwala, and myself. So we had worked together at NFL Network for years, not in this capacity, but knew each other well. It wasn't like we were shaking hands, and we had a great crew behind us. Jonathan Siegel is our producer. He's the guy that does weekly games for CBS, and that was really comforting. It was nice for me to get back in the booth for the first time in about 10 or 11 years, and I loved it.
Yeah, and it shows how, like even so, I went, when you were doing one, I looked down the Browns roster. I was like, let me find like a 6th-round draft pick they had that I liked, and I messaged you, like, or I tweet at you, like, big day for this, and Browns fans are like, he's not playing. I'm like, see, it's like it's impossible to know everything that's going on. Want to get some questions?
Hold on, I got a good Browns Giants story if you want it.
Go for it.
Okay, all right. I was fortunate enough where I was a Browns ball boy in the late 80s when the Browns were really good. I know this is going to come as a complete shock to our younger listeners.
Bernie Kosar.
Okay, they were really good. They won the division 5 times. They made the AFC Championship 3 times in 4-year span. And this is the year after the Browns lost the drive game to John Elway. Our first preseason game was against the defending Super Bowl champion New York Giants. So I am the youngest ball boy that's there. I'm going into my senior year in high school. All the other guys are either college or had graduated, and were actually working for the team. So they said, so we're doing training camp and stuff. They said, for your first game, here's the rule. You do not let the players touch the ball before the game, no matter what. I was like, okay. I get the first job with the most veteran ball boy on the Giants sideline to kick off the game. Before the game, Phil Simms comes over, the reigning Super Bowl MVP after going 20-25, pulls the ball out of my hand. I was like, and he starts playing catch with it. The other guy runs down the sideline, gets right in Phil Simms' face and goes, get your fucking hand off that football. You know you're not supposed to touch that football. Give it back to him right now. And Phil Simms gets right back in his face. He's like, I just wanted to see what it was like. That's all you know. Well, that's what it was. And I'm sitting here like this. Oh my God, Phil Simms is getting yelled at right in front of my face. I couldn't believe it. And eventually they gave it back. Phil Simms apologized. He said, I'm sorry about that. I said, it's fine. Have a nice game. So there you go. That was my
he definitely saw that you were, green behind the ears. Like, okay, I'm gonna get my ball. I'm gonna get my hands on this ball. Take about it, a couple psi out of it.
Yeah.
Which is one of the funnier things when you look at the Brady thing. It's like I remember Brad Johnson coming out like, oh yeah, we took the air out of some of those balls in that Super Bowl versus the Raiders. So want to get one more Giants thing, and then we will. I just want to talk shop about football and covering football.
Yeah.
When's the next time you are on NFL Network? Is it the
So I'll do this Saturday. I'll be on right after the Giants game. So the minute game's over, flip on over to us at NFL Network. We'll be breaking it down. You'll be hearing interviews from the field. You'll probably hear from the coaches as well within that hour. We'll look ahead to, whatever the matchup, whether for you guys, you hope that you're going to the winner of Sunday's game or the end of the road. But, it'll be interesting. I hope the Giants can keep it close. I obviously the X factor is Jalen Hurts' physical well-being. If he's feeling the way he did week 18, I think you guys are in this the whole time. If not, if he's feeling way better, I think it's a tough road for the Giants. Doesn't mean they can't win, but it's a tough one.
From the Giants fan point of view, Jalen Hurts, like that offense definitely is very helpful to him, but he took a huge step forward this year. Like he deserves a lot of credit for that. Like he's really like he reads defenses very well and takes what's there. And then when he has the shots to AJ Brown, he goes there. And Devontae Smith has been a great chain mover for him. But there is a part of the fan brain me is like, remember last year's playoff game with Jalen Hurts? Like, remember last year when he played the Giants? So that's kind of what we're hoping. That's my path to success for the Giants is like, don't let their front four let them beat. They're going to beat you. They're not. Our O-line is not going to hang out with them. Don't let them just totally game wreck you. And then hopefully we get some Jalen Hurts.
Well, that's the thing is that in that week 14 game, you take week 18, we know we throw that out. That doesn't matter. Although maybe it was encouraging for you guys that with a lot of your backups that you still came back and made him onside kick it.
And but a top 5 moment of the year, Kenny Galladay getting a touchdown.
Yeah.
That honestly, that is a top 5 happiest I was for the Giants this year was Kenny Galladay getting the touchdown.
Okay, might need to reevaluate if that's a top 5 happiest moment.
We've been waiting for so long. It's okay.
But I would say this, that week 14 game where they got you by almost 4 touchdowns. The alarming thing is that all 4 of those sacks came with just your base pressure, right? They didn't blitz anybody. It was four guys on the attack. If that happens, it turns into a long day, probably for that offense. Like I said, you can deal with sacks and pressure, but if it's just 4 that's doing it, that gives Gannon that defense so much more to work with. So
yeah, and they worked Evan Neal in the last game, and people say, "Well, come chip him and help him." Well, guess what? When you're chipping and helping, that is one less person. Not one less person just running a route. That's one less person creating space. And what's this Giants offense has, like you saw that Vikings game, they were elite at creating space.
Totally.
So let's talk about some behind, some football media questions. Ross Carson asked a great question. How much trouble would you get in if you mentioned Talking Giants on NFL Network after the game?
Zero.
So can we get... So you got to slip you like a 20 to get you like a little. You can even just mumble like a little Talking Giants versus the world.
We're family. Although Madden's passed and the chat says this guy sucks, so I don't. Now I don't.
He's talking about the chat I pulled up.
Okay.
That's Madden's Pass. All right, Madden's Pass. I'll give you the link to join, and I want to give a detailed description on why you think that.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. That's better. No, we're family, Bobby. We look out for family.
Just a little mumble. So that means Giants fans that are in the chat right now, we're not going to be able to record it. So we just need a quick little recording of that to put on social media. Just a little mumble of talking Giants versus the world.
Yeah,
you do a lot of draft coverage.
Here's what we do. I'll try to slide it in during the highlight. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I'm down for maybe. And if it's, I'm trying to think of what players would. So the offensive linemen like us. Like those are the players on the team that like us the most. So maybe if there's like some type of like Andrew Thomas, like Andrew Thomas is a big fan of us. Nick Gates. Nick Gates was the guy who had the quote about Minnesota being quiet.
Yeah.
So and he likes to get in fights after plays. So maybe that could be something.
Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with the highlight cutting process. We usually don't ISO offensive linemen very often. Now, last week, I will say this: when Christian McCaffrey had the 68-yard run in the first quarter against Seattle, we did show Trent Williams and George Kittle coming around and clearing the path.
Yeah.
Now, granted, Trent Williams is the best beast we've seen in.
He's the best left tackle in the NFL right now.
Yeah, and then some. So, he might get a little more love from our editors back there, but I'll tell him, hey, keep your eye on
if Nick Gates gets into like a little scrum after the play, maybe that could be something. Sure. The first Saquon touchdown, Andrew Thomas was out there leading the way.
Yes, he was.
But I'm not going to tell you. Now we got a lot of love in the chat. So that guy, that's why it's a good thing to point out the people that say you suck, because then everyone comes in and makes you feel good. Like Best Damn Sports Show.
Oh, yeah, listen.
Here is great.
I've been doing this for almost 30 years. You're not going to hurt my feelings. You could say almost anything, and it's fine.
That's something I always ask this when I talk with people from radio or TV. How often after regular TV shows over, how often do you just get random tweets from people? Like not just like replying to a tweet, just be like at Chris Rose, this one thing you said sucks. Because I talk to the radio guys, they get that all day long.
Yeah, so I got it a couple weeks ago when the Ravens and Steelers played that Sunday night game. Remember that? There's been a Kenny lot Pickett of those. Led a last-minute drive.
Oh, this year? Yeah. I thought you said. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So that was a game where, if you remember, Cam Hayward got in kind of late on the pile, and he was shoving. I forget which Raven it was, but they were kind of going at it, and Hayward got 15-yard penalty. It was a big problem. In fact, Minka Fitzpatrick was kind of yelling at him on the sidelines, and Cam Hayward was, I didn't do it, anything. I said, hey, Cam Hayward, one of the great guys in the league, he's got to know better, something like that. Well, a Steelers fan did not appreciate that. And he said, watch the play, you fucking moron. Why don't you go back? Even Chris Collinsworth came to Hayward's defense, and he hates us. Whatever. All I can tell you is that it was a 15-yard penalty, and if it's a veteran on a team, he's got to know better. That's all I said. I didn't say, oh, my God, Cam Hayward's the worst human ever, and what a dumbass. All I said is the fact, which is whether he retaliated or didn't retaliate, or I don't know. He's got to watch himself. But I don't ever go back at people. I really don't.
Yeah. It's so every fan base has its people. I feel like Steelers fans have a lot of their people, but they've been so good for so long that it's like, and I love the Mike Tomlin streak of never having a losing season. Like I'm rooting for that to never end. We'll finish off with this. You have the Chris Rose football podcast with tight end CJ Uzomah of the Jets, who was somebody. One of the first videos on that channel was talking about, remember that Thursday night football game versus the Jags, and he had like 3 or 4 catches. I broke down that drive, and that's when I kind of like, oh, this guy's actually a pretty good tight end. What do you got in the works on that? How is it? You been enjoying it?
Oh yeah. I think the latest episode's coming out tomorrow. We recorded with him yesterday. The thing that makes it challenging in football world as opposed to baseball, what I do with the Rose rotation is that I don't want to bother CJ every week. I just don't. And I told him that when we first met about the possibility of doing this, because I didn't know CJ. I just knew that he was a good talker. I thought he was an interesting guy that had interests outside of football that I really liked. He has been great. He is a good storyteller. He has a ton of interests outside of, the gridiron, which I love. I would hope that he would want to continue on. I think he does. We had a great talk yesterday, covered a lot of ground. He was watching the Bills-Bengals game with a bunch of teammates when Damar Hamlin went into cardiac arrest. And so that was really interesting to give a perspective of a football player watching with teammates, including Laurent Duvernay, who is a doctor. Remember, he used to play for the Chiefs, the offensive lineman.
Yeah. Oh,
And
yes. I was thinking Devin
during the
Duvernay for a
pandemic,
second.
he left football to go treat people in his native land of Canada, came back, and I think he's pretty much been on the Jets practice squad. So he was watching with him, with a doctor, while this whole thing was going down. So it was really fascinating.
Yeah, I've enjoyed listening. Or listen. I don't watch. I use the podcast app, so I've enjoyed listening to it. And like you said, he seems like a really down to earth guy. And I'm actually more excited for the off season of the show, because I just think when you're in season, like I think there's always a fear of being clipped up. And this quote. But even though he was honest, like I remember with the Robert Saleh, when he said, what was it Robert Saleh said about like they're keeping receipts, which is like
receipts,
yeah. So I liked his thoughts on that.
Mhm.
So
too.
it's been cool to see. So everyone go subscribe to the Jam Football channel, which should get rolling soon. I will say, Chris, that's been the most fun thing about, or the most stressful thing, not most stressful thing about the Giants winning is like we're behind. It's like Bill Belichick after when they win the Super Bowl. Like we're a month behind everybody else. Like we're going to Mobile for the Senior Bowl in 2 weeks, and it's like, are we gonna cover a conference championship in Mobile? But that'll be a good problem to have. Have you ever made
Yes,
it down to Mobile for the Senior Bowl?
I have not, because I've had to work back here. And so I just haven't, obviously all my friends are down there, and we have a specific group that goes down there every year, led by Andrew Siciliano and Daniel Jeremiah. And Charles Davis is usually down there, Bucky Brooks, and then a bazillion people behind the scenes. So it looks great. I know the guys really, really enjoy it.
Oh, it's our most fun trip of the year. Like
I'm sure it is.
Going to New York is whatever. I love going down to Alabama. Chris, appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Maybe one day we'll get on and just talk more shop about baseball and John Boy Media and everything.
Yeah, whatever you need. Listen, I'm happy for you guys, and I'm really proud of you guys. This is you guys really grind, and so it's not easy starting from scratch in the streaming world. It takes a lot, right? It takes a lot to get rewarded, and sometimes it comes down the line. But you guys have been busting ass. I loved seeing the video last week of your watch party.
That's the worst version of myself. Like, when players say when the helmet turns, I'm a different person. I become a bad human being.
No, you don't.
On those watch parties.
No, you don't. It was great. It was really fun, and you deserve the success that is coming your way. And you made the company proud, and I think it's awesome. I really do. I think it's great.
Appreciate you big time. We'll talk soon. Thanks again.
You got it. And maybe one day Justin won't be so big time that he can.
I know, man. Like I gave him one stream off when we started, so we honestly don't do live streams a ton, because you have to answer the same questions over and over again. It becomes radio, where it's like, all right, we've talked about Daniel Jones
right
long enough. Like, just listen to the podcast. But for the playoffs, we've been streaming. I gave him one off. He hasn't showed up in 2 weeks. So everyone go tweet at Justin to start showing up to the streams.
You know what happened? He became too big from blitzball umpiring.
That's what it is.
He gets booked for a lot of modeling contracts and everything.
He's the John Boy Media elite at this point,
Happens.
But we appreciate you. And we'll do it again soon. Thanks, Chris.
You got it, brother. Hey, good luck with everything this weekend. Go G-Men.